Hi there, I'm Beth Ann and I'm here with my husband Ryan. We're reviewing Port Crescent State Park at the tip of the thumb in Michigan.
I've always wanted to stay at Port Crescent State Park. I've heard a lot of really good things about it. I visited briefly before but never had a chance to stay, and it's always been a bucket list for me in Michigan. We
camped in early June 2023 and spent 2 nights at Port Crescent State Park. The campground at Port Crescent State Park is quite small and is right off the highway. There are regular electric sites, RV sites, and also several rentals that you can take advantage of, all different sizes. There's geodesic domes. So that's a nice option if you're with people who want that experience but don't necessarily like roughing it. They even have hammock sites next to the beach where you can hang your hammock and set up your tent. And the whole front row is basically 10 steps from the beach, which is pretty amazing. The topography of the park is fairly hilly, and it's a couple of loops, so you can expect to do some climbing and descending as you make your way through the park. You should also know that there are about 15 to 20 steps down to the beach area from the main loop. There are 2 bathrooms in Port Crescent State Park, which could stand to be updated. The restrooms were clean despite being old. I would rate the camping at Port Crescent State Park a 7 out of 10. If you're interested in camping at Port Crescent State Park, I highly recommend making a reservation for a beachfront site, which would definitely take you from a 7 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10 experiences. These sites are top-notch. You can hang your hammock, you're 20 steps from the water. Staying on the beach is also great because you'll get a lot less of the noise from the state highway that we are hearing in the rest of the park.
So my first category is recreation. Now, obviously, Port Crescent is right along Lake Huron, so there's plenty of amazing beaches. And if you're too close to somebody, just go further down the lake. What's really cool about this part of Lake Huron is it's actually quite sandy. Most of Lake Huron on Michigan's side tends to be quite rocky due to it being on the east side of the lake. But because Port Crescent State Park is on the west side of Saginaw Bay, it gets quite sandy beaches, and Port Crescent State Park is no exception. That being said, beyond beach time, there's very little else to do as far as recreation in Port Crescent State Park. Number one, you're sort of separated from the day use area anyway if you're camping. So you have to go in your car, or you could walk along the beach another 1.5 miles to get to the main recreation area, where there are some trails, including the Dunes Nature Trail, which is a 3/4 mile loop trail that is quite accessible, that features 2 major ecosystems, one being the dunes and another dune forest. It's a really easy trail. There's very little elevation. There's very little elevation in the thumb of Michigan to begin with. My biggest critique about the recreation throughout Port Crescent State Park is really how tired much of the infrastructure is. Whether it's information signs being so faded by the sun that nothing is legible, or some of the boardwalks having nails sticking out, it really does feel like it's time for the DNR to take a look at some renovations. I know this is a very popular park, and I can only imagine that they're aware of these issues, but it does detract from the experience nonetheless. One regret that I might have about this trip was not bringing kayaks. We saw a lot of campers and visitors with kayaks, and it really was clear that Port Crescent has a number of really good kayaking options, whether that be up and down streams or along the coast of Lake Huron. All in all, it's a decent place for recreation, but I really have to detract points for the lack of variety and the tired infrastructure. So I would give recreation a 6 out of 10. Now, location is everything with a state park. And first and foremost, Port Crescent State Park is a really hard state park to get to. From Metro Detroit, you're at least 2 hours away. From Lansing, you're probably another 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half. But Grand Rapids, where we're from, is a good 3.5 to 4 hours, depending on the traffic. This is compounded because there's no direct highways or freeways that go anywhere close to Port Crescent State Park, so getting there can be quite the challenge, especially on busy weekends. However, Port Crescent State Park is between two good little communities, Caseville and Port Austin. Caseville is about 20 minutes away, while Port Austin is about 10 minutes away. Each are really good for small dining options. There's ice cream shops, tourist shops. Port Austin is a really good point to put in your kayak if you're trying to make the journey to Turnip Rock, a popular rock formation in Michigan. And Caseville is internationally known for its cheeseburger festival. One night we decided to go into Caseville to try out Thumb Brewery, and we had a really good time. Caseville is an intimate little town, as is Port Austin, and it's clear that both of these communities rely on tourism to succeed. A good highlight for Port Austin is the farmers market on Saturday mornings in the summer. It's a really well-maintained and healthy farmers market with a number of vendors from local farms to crafts and arts from the area. We managed to get some pasties and a number of other goods to take back to our campsite and eat for lunch. And I'd highly recommend taking advantage of the farmers market in Port Austin. As for location, with all of those things in consideration, I would rate location, I would rate it a 7 out of 10, as there are decent options nearby, but the park is significantly hard to get to for a majority of Michigan's population.
Port Crescent State Park is a great place to spend the weekend. In addition to enjoying a couple of small trails nearby, you can also do the Hawks Watch, which is a viewing platform for birds of prey in the area. Something that does set Port Crescent State Park apart from other state parks is that it's part of a dark sky preserve, which means that it's one of the best places in the state to view the stars on a clear night. Unfortunately, we were there during the Canadian wildfires, so it was a little hazy and we weren't able to have that experience, but if you can go on the right night, it would be a great place to check out some astronomy. Our overall rating of Port Crescent State Park is a 7 out of 10. If you can get one of those beachfront sites, you're definitely looking at a better experience than 7 out of 10, of course, but just looking at it overall, we loved the topography of the park, that it really feels kind of like you're hiking as you make your way through. The beach is right there, which is wonderful. Port Austin is a great town to visit. Go to the farmers market. You also have a lot of options in Caseville if you're looking for a party, and we really enjoyed our time there. Outside of the beaches, your recreation options are limited. It's far from a lot of metro areas. The bathrooms are not updated, and much of the signage along the hiking trails needs to be updated as well.
Thanks for watching, and let us know what state parks you'd like us to check out.
Thanks for joining us for our adventures in Port Crescent State Park. We hope you'll check back soon to see our next reviews of Michigan state parks.
That's all I think I have to say.
Port Crescent, Michigan.